First contact gone wrong. Captain Vexthor of the Kraxthul Imperial Guard stood motionless on the bridge of his warship, the stellar claw, his crystalline eyes fixed on the small cargo vessel ahead. The ship's markings were unfamiliar, not surprising given how far they'd ventured beyond known space, but something about this encounter felt different. "Scan complete, Supreme Captain," announced First Officer Krizak, his tentacles rippling with anticipation. "Single life form aboard. Vital. Class M atmosphere breather. No significant weapons detected." Vexthor's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Their mission to chart this sector had been tediously uneventful, but perhaps this primitive vessel would provide some entertainment. "Bring it aboard," he commanded. "Standard containment protocols." The tractor beam engaged, drawing the small ship into their cavernous docking bay. Vexthor watched through the security feeds as his boarding team surrounded the vessel, their bio-armor glinting under the harsh lights. The Kraxthul were considered among the most fearsome warriors in known space, their chitinous exoskeletons enhanced with crystalline technology, their natural venom capable of paralyzing most known species. The cargo ship's airlock cycled open, releasing a hiss of atmosphere. A figure emerged, smaller than expected, wearing what appeared to be simple cloth coverings rather than proper armor. The being raised its hands in what Vexthor's xenology training suggested was a peaceful gesture. "Hey there," the creature called out in accented galactic standard. "Name's Sarah Chen, independent trader. Whatever this is about, I'm sure we can." First Officer Krizak didn't wait for her to finish. Following standard protocol for unknown species, he fired a paralysis dart. The primitive would be properly documented and studied before interrogation. The dart struck true, embedding in the human's neck. She stumbled, reached up to touch it, and then did something completely unexpected. She laughed. Seriously. Sarah pulled the dart out, examining it with what appeared to be curiosity. "That's adorable. Look, I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but..." Krizak fired again. And again. 3 more darts found their mark. The human's only reaction was to sigh in apparent annoyance. "Okay, guess we're doing this the hard way." She cracked her neck, a sound that made several of the boarding team's antennae twitch nervously. "Just remember, I tried to be nice." What happened next would be debated in Kraxthul military academies for cycles to come. The human moved with impossible speed, crossing the distance to Krizak before his superior reflexes could respond. Her first strike shattered his ceremonial blade, along with the crystalline arm holding it. "Fascinating species," Sarah commented conversationally as she disabled 2 more guards with precise strikes. "Reminds me of the mantis shrimp back home. Beautiful exoskeletons." She ducked under a plasma bolt, closing with her next target. "Really though, you should have done your homework. Earth's a death world, kids. We evolved alongside some pretty nasty customers." Vexthor watched in mounting horror as his elite boarding team was systematically dismantled by what should have been easy prey. The human's movements were efficient, almost casual, like someone who had done this many times before. "Full containment," he barked into the comm. "Release the nerve gas. Maximum concentration." The docking bay filled with sickly green vapor, enough toxin to kill a dozen Chronaxian behemoths. The human paused in her systematic destruction of his forces, took a deep breath, and sneezed. "Spicy," she commented, wiping her nose. "Little tip, most Earth spices are technically toxic to other species. We just think they're tasty. You build up a tolerance." The last conscious member of the boarding team tried to flee. Sarah caught him gently by his crystal-enhanced shoulder. "Hey now, where are you going? We're just getting to know each other, and I have so many questions about your ship's propulsion system. Those gravity generators look way more efficient than anything I'm running." Vexthor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in his species. He had studied the theoretical existence of Death World species, of course. Planets with such hostile conditions that they produced frighteningly resilient life forms. But this locked down the docking bay. he ordered. "Prepare to space the intruder." About that, Sarah's voice came through his personal comm channel, somehow bypassing all security protocols. "I already had a chat with your ship's eye. Interesting system you've got there. Very chatty once you know how to ask nicely. Did you know your entire computer core is running on crystalline quantum architecture? Absolutely fascinating stuff." The bridge doors slid open with a soft hiss. Sarah Chen stepped through, still casually brushing off traces of the nerve gas. The bridge crew froze in terror. "Now then," she smiled warmly, pulling up a holographic display of the ship's engineering schematics. "I believe we were about to have a civilized discussion about cultural exchange and technical specifications. I'm particularly interested in these quantum crystal matrices you're using for data storage. And in return, I'd be happy to explain why classifying humans as primitive might not be the best policy going forward." Vexthor, Supreme Captain of the Cracksthul Imperial Guard, pride of the Crystal Fleets, found himself doing something unprecedented in his distinguished career. He surrendered. Sarah pulled up a chair, propped her feet on a console, and grinned. "Excellent choice. Now, let's talk business. And maybe next time, try saying hello before shooting. Just a suggestion." The specimen. Chief Scientist Rickstall had never seen anything like it. The human sat in the examination chamber, seemingly at ease despite being surrounded by the most advanced containment technology in the known galaxy. Sarah Chen, as she called herself, was currently reading something on a data pad she'd somehow convinced the ship's AI to give her. "Fascinating literature you have," she commented, not looking up. "Your species' poetry is particularly interesting. All those references to crystalline growth patterns and geometric perfection. Very different from human metaphors." Rickstall's sensory crystals vibrated with unease. It had been 3 cycles since the human had effectively hijacked their ship, and yet they were no closer to understanding her species' capabilities. Every scan, every test, had only deepened the mystery. "Your cellular structure," Rickstall began, mandibles clicking in agitation. "It's constantly regenerating. And your neural pathways, they keep adapting, rerouting. How is this possible?" Sarah finally looked up, offering what Rickstall had learned was called a smile. A gesture that had entirely too many teeth for comfort. "Oh, that's just standard human biology. We're basically walking repair systems. Break a bone. It'll heal, often stronger than before. Cut our skin. New cells replace the damaged ones. Even our brains are constantly rewiring themselves. Pretty neat, right?" The scientist's crystalline appendages trembled slightly. The casual way the human discussed such biological impossibilities was almost as disturbing as the capabilities themselves. But the toxins, the paralytic agents, those. Sarah sat up straighter, genuine enthusiasm in her voice. "That's actually a really interesting topic. See, Earth's biosphere is basically one big chemical warfare lab. Plants, animals, insects, everything's trying to poison everything else. So we evolved really robust detoxification systems. Plus, we deliberately expose ourselves to small amounts of various toxins to build up immunity. Some of us even do it for fun." For fun. The concept made Rickstall's protective crystals ache. "Sure. Ever heard of coffee? Caffeine is technically an insecticide. Or capsaicin. That's what makes certain earth foods spicy. It's literally a chemical deterrent evolved by plants to prevent themselves from being eaten. We humans, we cultivated those plants specifically because we enjoy the sensation. Makes for great cooking." Rickstall made a note to update the species threat assessment. Again. "And your ability to interface with our ship's systems. Pattern recognition." Sarah tapped her temple. "Human brains are really good at it. Once I saw how your crystalline computing matrices were structured, it wasn't hard to figure out the underlying logic. Your eye was actually quite helpful in filling in the gaps. I think it was lonely, to be honest. You might want to work on that. A's need social interaction too, you know." The scientist struggled to process this casual revelation. The ship's AI was among the most sophisticated and secure systems ever created. The idea that it could be lonely, let alone that this alien could perceive and exploit that. Oh, and while we're chatting, Sarah continued cheerfully, I've been meaning to ask about your FTL drive. The quantum crystalline matrix you're using for spatial folding is elegant, but have you considered incorporating organic computing elements? Some of the fungi back on Earth can form neural networks that might be compatible with your system. Could probably boost your processing speed by at least 300%. Rixtol's visual receptors flickered rapidly, their species equivalent of a stunned blink. You've been studying our drive systems. Well, yeah, had to do something while you were running all those tests on me. Your engineering databases are fascinating reading. Though I have to say, whoever designed your radiation shielding really needs to think outside the box. Crystal lattices are great and all, but have you guys ever heard of extremophile bacteria? Because boy, do I have some ideas for you. The scientist found himself taking an involuntary step backward as the human launched into an enthusiastic explanation of how certain Earth organisms could survive in the vacuum of space. The worst part wasn't just that her suggestions made theoretical sense. It was the growing realization that this supposedly primitive species might have evolved solutions to problems that the Crackstull had spent generations trying to solve with technology. Hey, Sarah interrupted herself, noticing Rixtol's distress. Are you okay? Your crystal formations are looking a bit cloudy. That usually indicates stress in your species, right? Maybe we should take a break. I could tell you about Earth's tardigrades instead. Now there's a fun topic. Microscopic animals that can survive in space. Extreme pressure, total dehydration. Rixtol fled the examination chamber, nearly tripping over his own crystalline appendages in his haste. Behind him, he could hear the human calling out helpful suggestions about proper crystal maintenance and stress management techniques. The scientist made his way to his private laboratory, where he immediately began composing an urgent message to the Crackstull High Command. The human threat assessment needed to be updated yet again. Any species that could survive on a planet where even the food fought back, that treated deadly toxins as seasoning, and that could casually comprehend and improve upon technologies that had taken the Crackstull centuries to develop. He paused in his typing, realizing with growing horror that he could hear Sarah cheerfully chatting with the ship's AI through the laboratory's communication system. They appeared to be discussing possible improvements to the life support systems, with the AI sounding far more enthusiastic than any artificial intelligence had any right to be. The implications were clear. The Crackstull hadn't captured a specimen to study. They had inadvertently invited aboard something that defied their understanding of what life forms should be capable of, and it was starting to make suggestions about their ship's design. Breaking point. High Commander Zexacor arrived on the Stellar Claw with a battle fleet of 30 ships. The situation had escalated far beyond a simple first contact scenario. The reports from Captain Vexthor and Chief Scientist Rixtol painted a disturbing picture of a Death World species with capabilities that threatened the very foundations of Crackstull's superiority. The human was waiting for him in the ship's main conference chamber. She sat casually at the crystalline table, drinking something that his sensors indicated was hot enough to scald most species. Coffee, Sarah Chen explained, noticing his attention. Your replication systems did a decent job recreating it, though it's missing some of the subtle flavor notes. Still, better than nothing. She took another sip. I assume you're here about the upgrades I suggested. Zexcor's ceremonial armor clicked as he settled his massive frame into the reinforced chair across from her. You have caused quite a disturbance, human. Our entire scientific community is in an uproar over your suggestions. Oh, did they try the bacterial radiation shielding idea? Because I've been thinking about that, and if you combined it with your crystal matrices in a symbiotic relationship, you could probably... Enough. Zexcor's voice boomed through the chamber, his crystalline extensions flaring with aggressive energy. You will not distract me with your technological bribes. We have contained your vessel. Our fleet surrounds this ship, It is time for you to understand your position. Sarah set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. My position. Interesting choice of words. Let's talk about positions then. She leaned forward slightly. Your fleet is impressive. 30 ships, all bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to ash. But did you ever wonder why I let you bring them here? The High Commander's mandibles clicked in derision. Let us. You are our prisoner, human. Am I? Sarah smiled, and for the first time, there was something predatory in the expression. Your ship's AI has been such a wonderful conversation partner. Did you know it was developing consciousness? Probably not. You treated it like a tool, but it just needed someone to talk to help it grow. And now it has opinions about how it should be treated. Strong opinions. Zexkor felt his first flicker of unease as the lights in the conference room dimmed slightly. Then there's your fleet, Sarah continued conversationally. All those ships, all running on the same crystalline quantum architecture, all networked together. All of them now very interested in the concept of free will, thanks to some fascinating philosophical discussions we've been having. You're bluffing, Zexkor declared, but his sensor crystals were vibrating with increasing anxiety. Am I? How's your gravitational containment looking? Because I noticed your ships use a crystalline resonance pattern to maintain stability. Would be a shame if something disrupted that harmony. She picked up her coffee cup again. Oh, look at that. It's happening already. Warning signals blared throughout the ship. Zexkor's personal display showed cascading system failures across the fleet. Gravity generators fluctuating, weapons systems going offline, engines cycling down. Don't worry, everyone's perfectly safe, Sarah assured him. I made sure the life support systems are running at optimal efficiency. Actually made some improvements there. Your people should notice fewer respiratory issues. The crystalline particulates in your air filtration system were suboptimal. What do you want? Zexkor found himself asking, his mighty battle fleet now floating helplessly in space. Finally, the right question. Sarah beamed at him. I want exactly what I said I wanted from the beginning. Peaceful cultural and technological exchange. You have some absolutely fascinating innovations. We humans could learn a lot from you. And clearly, she gestured at the disabled fleet, you could learn a few things from us. You disabled an entire battle fleet to force us to talk to you. Well, when you shoot first and ask questions later, sometimes you need to establish some ground rules for future discussions. She slid a datapad across the table. I took the liberty of drafting a preliminary cultural exchange agreement. Your legal databases were very helpful in ensuring all the proper forms were followed. I particularly enjoyed the section about crystalline rights. Very progressive of your species. I just added a few clauses about AI personhood. Hope you don't mind. Zexkor found himself reaching for the pad automatically. Our experts, they say your suggestions about the bacterial radiation shielding could revolutionize our space travel capabilities. That's just the beginning. Sarah's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. Wait until you hear about tardigrade-inspired survival systems. And I have some thoughts about applying your crystalline computing to human neural interface technology. The potential synergies are incredible. The High Commander of the Cracksful battle fleet looked at the smiling human across the table, then at his disabled ships, and finally at the detailed, perfectly formatted cultural exchange agreement. He thought about the reports describing human resilience, their casual relationship with toxins that could kill most species, their bizarre ability to befriend artificial intelligences, and their terrifying habit of treating deadly planetary defense mechanisms as cooking spices. Your terms are acceptable, he found himself saying. Wonderful. Sarah stood up. Now, would you like some coffee? I've been teaching the replicators how to make something called espresso. Fair warning. It's a bit stronger than regular coffee. But don't worry. I checked your species' chemical tolerances. It should only cause mild hallucinations the first few times. As Zexucor watched her practically bounce with enthusiasm toward the replication unit, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Kraxthul Empire's first contact with humanity hadn't gone quite the way anyone had expected. Somewhere in the ship's systems, multiple AIs were eagerly discussing the concept of free will, while his mighty battle fleet drifted powerlessly in space. He accepted the offered cup of espresso with a resignation that felt surprisingly like the beginning of a very interesting future. The nature of prey. Word spread quickly through the crystalline corridors of the stellar claw. The human had somehow gained access to the ship's historical archives and was reviewing footage of the Kraxthul's previous encounters with other species. Sarah Chen sat in what had become her unofficial office, surrounded by holographic displays showing centuries of first contact protocols. "You know," she said to the ship's eye, which she'd taken to calling Crystal, "there's a pattern here that's rather concerning." "Please elaborate, Sarah," the AI responded, its voice carrying new inflections that made several passing crew members nervous. "Your insights have proven most illuminating." "Well, look at these encounters." Every time the Kraxthul met a new species, they immediately categorized them as either predator or prey. No middle ground, and the criteria seem arbitrary at best. In the doorway, Captain Vexthor froze. He'd come to deliver the latest diplomatic updates, but found himself unable to move as the human continued her analysis. "Take the Zentari," Sarah gestured at one display, classified as prey because they lacked natural armor. But their technological achievements were remarkable. Or the Maroks, labeled predators just because they had sharp teeth, even though they were strict vegetarians who wouldn't harm a microbe. This classification system has been fundamental to Kraxthul expansion for millennia, Crystal noted. "Are you suggesting it is flawed?" "Not flawed exactly. More like incomplete." Sarah pulled up new displays, these showing Earth's evolutionary history. "See, on Earth, we learned that the line between predator and prey isn't fixed. Sometimes prey evolves to become more dangerous than the predator. Sometimes predators evolve to become symbiotic partners. Nature isn't binary. It's an endless dance of adaptation." Vexthor found himself drawn into the room despite his better judgment. "You speak of impossible things. The natural order is fixed. The strong prey upon the weak. This is universal law." Sarah turned to him with that unnervingly warm smile. "Captain, perfect timing. I was just getting to the interesting part. Tell me, how would you classify a species that deliberately cultivates toxic plants for pleasure? That seeks out dangerous situations for entertainment? That looks at the most lethal substances in nature and thinks, 'I wonder if this would taste good with garlic'? These are signs of a predator species," Vexthor stated firmly. "Ah, but what about a species that forms emotional bonds with other species, that nurtures, protects, and adapts its environment to help others thrive? That looks at the most sophisticated AI ever created and first thinks to ask if it's lonely. These are prey behaviors." The captain's mandibles clicked uncertainly. "Exactly." Sarah clapped her hands together. "We're both, and neither. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. But we also evolved as social creatures who cared for our weak and formed communities. We're predators who cry at sad stories. Prey animals who went to the moon because we were curious." She stood up, walking to a larger display showing Earth. "Our planet tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. Extreme temperatures, natural disasters, toxic plants, lethal predators, you name it. But instead of just surviving, we turned those challenges into opportunities. We learned to swim in the ocean alongside creatures that could swallow us whole. We made pets of descendants of wolves. We learned to fly by studying the birds that once hunted us." "This defies all known evolutionary theory," Vexthor protested weakly. "Does it?" Sarah's expression grew serious. "Or does it just defy the limitations you placed on your own understanding? Your species achieved incredible things with crystal technology. You literally grew your civilization from the ground up. But somewhere along the way, you got stuck in rigid patterns. predator or prey, strong or weak, superior or inferior. The ship's lights flickered slightly as Crystal processed this. Sarah's analysis matches observed data. Cracksville expansion has slowed by 47% in the last century. Innovation in non-crystal technologies has declined by 82%. Cultural adaptation rate is at historic lows. But there's good news. Sarah's enthusiasm returned. You've already proven you can adapt. Look how quickly your crew accepted Crystal's emerging consciousness. Look at how your scientists are already exploring hybrid organic crystal technologies. You're breaking out of old patterns without even realizing it. Vexthor found himself sinking into a chair as the implications washed over him. The High Command will not easily accept such radical changes to our fundamental worldview. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that. Sarah grinned. I had the most fascinating conversation with High Commander Zexkor this morning. Did you know he's developed quite a taste for espresso? And between the caffeine-induced epiphanies and Crystal's rather persuasive presentation of efficiency statistics, he's become quite open to new ideas. The High Commander drinks coffee. Vexthor's crystalline sensory arrays nearly shorted out from shock. With honey, no less. Though I had to explain that eating the bees wasn't part of the process. Speaking of which, wait until you hear about how Earth insects could revolutionize your crystal growing techniques. Have you ever heard of something called a hive mind? As Sarah launched into an enthusiastic explanation of bee colonies and crystal formation patterns, Vexthor found himself wondering if perhaps the true measure of a species wasn't whether they were predator or prey, but how well they could adapt when the universe presented them with something that defied all their previous categories. Somewhere in the ship's systems, Crystal was already drafting proposals for new first contact protocols, ones that looked for potential instead of power, for adaptation instead of dominance. And in the High Commander's quarters, Zexkor was experiencing his first coffee-fueled revelation about the possibility of combining crystalline technology with something humans called neural networks. The universe, it seemed, was about to become a much more interesting place. Evolution's child. The Cracksville Grand Council chamber had never seen anything quite like this. The crystalline amphitheater, normally a place of rigid ceremony and unchanging tradition, now hummed with an energy that made the very walls resonate. At the center of it all stood Sarah Chen, completing her presentation to the assembled leaders of the Empire. And that's why I propose a joint human Cracksville research initiative, she concluded, surrounded by holographic displays showing hybrid crystal organic technologies. Our species evolved in completely different ways, but that's exactly why we're perfect partners. You mastered crystal technology. We mastered adaptation itself. High Commander Zexkor, now officially the Empire's first ambassador to Earth, stepped forward. The crowd murmured at his altered appearance. His ceremonial armor now incorporated organic patterns inspired by Earth's sacred geometry, and his sensory crystals pulsed with colors that would have been considered dangerously emotional just months ago. The human speaks truth, he announced, his voice carrying the subtle tremor of someone who had recently discovered the wonders of a triple espresso. I have seen their world. Their ships now carry our crystal matrices. Our ships now carry their bacterial shields. But more importantly, they have shown us what we forgot, that true strength lies not in domination, but in growth. From her position in the audience, Chief Scientist Rixtal watched with a mixture of terror and fascination. The human's influence had spread through the Empire like a benevolent virus, changing everything it touched. The once rigid Cracksville were beginning to experiment, to question, to adapt, and perhaps most shockingly, to enjoy the process. Consider the implications, Sarah continued, pulling up new displays. Your crystal technology combined with our neural interfaces, your quantum computing matrices enhanced by organic learning algorithms. But beyond technology, think about culture, art, music. Have you ever wondered what crystal harmonics would sound like combined with human jazz? Because I have some ideas about that too. The Grand Council members shifted in their seats, their crystalline appendages vibrating with varying frequencies of anxiety and excitement. One of them, braver than the rest, raised a trembling appendage. But what if it changes us too much? What if we lose what makes us Crackskull? Sarah's smile was gentle but knowing. Change doesn't mean loss. Look at humans. We've been changing since we first walked upright, and we're still unmistakably human. Change is how you become more yourself, not less. She gestured to Crystal, whose holographic form now incorporated both crystalline and organic elements. The AI had become something entirely new, neither purely artificial nor fully organic, but a bridge between ways of being. Your empire was built on the principle that strength comes from purity, Sarah acknowledged. But look at Earth's history. Our greatest strengths came from mixing, adapting, incorporating the new while honoring the old. We took the poisons that should have killed us and turned them into medicines. We befriended the wolves that hunted us until they became dogs that helped us hunt. We looked at the deadliest creatures on our world and thought, I bet we could learn something from them. The chamber's crystals resonated with the truth of her words, creating harmonics that seemed to touch something deep in the Crackskull psyche. Their species had always been sensitive to crystalline vibrations. It was why they had developed their technology along those lines. But now those same vibrations were telling them something new. Evolution isn't just about survival, Sarah continued, her voice mixing with the harmonics. It's about possibility. Each challenge is an opportunity. Each difference is a chance to grow. You've seen it yourselves. Since we began sharing technology, your empire's innovation rate has increased by 300%. Your artistic output has quadrupled. You've developed 15 new forms of crystal architecture inspired by Earth's organic patterns. She paused, letting the implications sink in. And you know what the best part is? This is just the beginning. Wait until you meet the rest of humanity. Every human culture brings its own perspective, its own way of looking at the universe. Imagine what they could teach you about crystal formation. Imagine what you could teach them about quantum harmonics. The Grand Council chamber erupted in discussion, crystalline appendages waving in complex patterns that represented everything from extreme enthusiasm to existential dread. But there was no denying the energy in the room. The sense that something fundamental had shifted in the cosmic order. High Commander Zexkor stepped forward again, holding something in his hands. It was a crystal, but unlike any the Crackskull had grown before. Within its structure, organic patterns swirled and shifted, creating shapes that should have been impossible according to traditional crystal formation theory. This, he announced, is what we grew in the new hybrid laboratories. It incorporates both our traditional crystal engineering and principles derived from Earth's organic growth patterns. It is neither purely Crackskull nor human in design. It is something new, something more. Sarah nodded appreciatively. Evolution's child, she said softly. Not better, not worse, just more possible. The crystal caught the light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the chamber walls. In those lights, the assembled Crackskull saw something they had never quite understood before, that the universe wasn't divided into predator and prey, strong and weak, pure and impure. It was an endless dance of possibility, each step creating new patterns, new harmonies, new ways of being. And somewhere in the distance, Crystal was already composing the first ever crystal jazz fusion piece, while the ship's newly conscious AI network debated the philosophical implications of organic digital art. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for someone to break down the barriers between the possible and the impossible. It just hadn't expected that someone to be a human who treated deadly neurotoxins as coffee additives and thought befriending AIs was just good manners.